Broadcasting live. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for stopping by for another episode in a little bit of a different environment. Coming to you live on video and coming to you with a very special guest today. You are listening to your favorite Blockhead, the only podcast in the podcasting world that can somehow incorporate the Peanuts comic strip 1 minute and then be talking about MMA and warriors inside the octagon the next. And we will get to that with our very special guest that is on the line. But before I get to him, ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you a little about one of my affiliate plugs today. I would like to talk to you about TrueDog. TrueDog exclusively uses premium grade human cuts of U.S. sourced meats. No wheat, no corn, no grains, no sugars, no fillers, no chemicals or byproducts. TrueDog foods and snacks have no refined carbohydrates, no added salts, just pure, digestible quality protein, as has been seen on NBC, CBS, ABS, Fox, Lifetime, and the Health and Wellness Channel. TrueDog foods and snacks are formulated with advice and nurturing from leading holistic veterinarians to help dogs live a longer, happier, and healthier life. So you know you want to take better care of your furry loved ones. So TrueDog backs each and every one of their products with an unconditional 60-day money-back guarantee. You love it or you get your money back. It's that simple. So when you go check out my links today after watching and listening to the podcast, I could save you anywhere from 30% up to 70% that are on treats, supplements, dental and grooming products for your furry loved ones, and so much more. I've got a special little surprise for you today. Whenever you get to check out, whenever you decide to get your very first Love Club order, listen closely to this one, listeners. You can get 20% off of your first Love Club order at TrueDog. When you get to checkout, make sure you use the promo code TrueDogTLC. That's all one word, all lowercase, TRUDOG TLC, and you must select auto ship. This is going to expire at the end of the year, but all through this time, anytime you come across this podcast, if you want to get 20% off of your first Love Club order from TrueDog, use that code TrueDogTLC, and I just saved you 20% off of your purchase. So enjoy treating your furry loved ones that you love all so much with TrueDog. One other thing I want to mention. Big shout out to the Dose Leprechauns Podcast Network. These guys are out in the beautiful SD, that's San Diego, California to you. They're at the beautiful Qualcomm Stadium at this point, and they are watching Notre Dame versus Navy in the one game I have to side against the Fighting Irish. Have to go with my Navy on this one. But to promote them, if you go to this website, Jedi Master, if you would please show them the t-shirt that I am wearing on set today for the Dose Leprechauns podcast. You can go get yours from www.prowrestlingtees.com. And when you go to the auto select and you put in Dose Leprechauns, you will see this t-shirt that I am wearing on set today. It's comfortable. I love being part of the network with these guys, and I guarantee you that my next guest is going to be automatically added as of today to the Dose Leprechauns podcast network. So I'm thrilled to have him on. Before we get going, I got a scripture for the day to share with you listeners. The scripture for the day is Colossians 1, verse 28. Let me take my little swig here. He is the one we proclaim, admonishing and teaching everyone with all wisdom, so that we may present everyone fully mature in Christ. Now, if you're coming across this and you think, Brian, are you trying, or Blockhead, let's be real to the gimmick here. If you're trying to persuade me to a certain faith, let me just put it this way. It is said in Scripture, and this should be held dear in society and culture, that we should season our words with the salt of His truth. Even when overt references to our faith aren't accepted. If you don't appreciate that one, let me give you another one. There was a famous person by the name of He-Man that once said, must always value life, even the life of one who opposes us. And I'd like to believe that's relevant during this volatile time of elections and everything we're facing. Now, I have with me today in the studio, enough talk on my end, we have a gentleman from beautiful Ohio that has been on the show more than once with your favorite Blockhead, but he is coming in with a very special podcast that he promotes. He is the co-host of 8192 The Truth with the Godfather Joel Supernaw. Today we have the man himself, my personal friend, Mr. Brother Sin, Kevin Surnear. Kevin, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Special? Is that the best word we can come up with to describe this?
Enlightened.
There's got to be something a little more perfunctory, a little more appropriate.
Jedi Master, could you look up that word perfunctory? Let's go to Oxford Dictionary.
Life altering, perhaps, or
I had
game changing.
I can give you that.
Rattling.
I would give you that one. Yeah. I'm loving it. He's already coming in on fire, ladies and gentlemen. So the quick catch up I have.
Of the day. What more can I say? I reign supreme where I go. I live my life to put on a show. Women love me. Men stare in awe. If you ever go against a brother, you too shall fall.
A little bit of taste of Chael Sonnen right there. I think you two could definitely have a little smack off in the world of poetry amongst Neanderthal or something like that, and I digress. That was beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. A little bit of Brother Sin right there coming from the 8192 The Truth podcast. Now, the last time you and I talked, here's what I do want to ask you sincerely, Kevin, is when we last talked, you did a swap cast with me, and you were in the moving process. I think you were in a hotel that night. So maybe you can catch up the listeners about where you are today. You've moved in. You have another child in the family. And how are things going with that, my friend?
Good, yes. So we have moved into likely to be the final castle of the Surnear residence. Moving is a pain in the butt, and we don't plan on doing it again. So we're in the home. We have brought in baby number 4, fourth heir to the Surnear lineage, to the throne of all that reigns here in Canton, Ohio. But so everything is good. We got 3 girls now, and my little man Chael J. Yeah. But life is good.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. You actually named your son, and you got the attention of one Chael P. Sonnen with that. We have a little Chael in Brother Sin's house. That was clever. What is the name of the little princess that we just got for the listeners who don't know?
Ariana Callie.
That is beautiful for those who are listening. Absolutely. So here's kind of where I do that. We're caught up and you moved in and everything. I have to ask you about something. As of late, Texas struggles with a certain sport, and you can smarten them up on this one. In Texas, we don't really revere a collegiate-style wrestling like we should because our football players would be better, but maybe you can walk them through the play-by-play on what just happened with the 2018 Men's Freestyle Wrestling Championship. Give us some thoughts on that, bud.
I mean, the big headline with 2 of them now on both the men's and the women's side. The 2 big headlines that came out of that were Kyle Snyder getting pinned in a minute 24 by Sajalov, the guy that he beat in the Olympic finals. Mm-hmm. And then on the women's side, undefeated, unscored against in her last 10 bouts, Helen Morales got beaten twice, didn't even medal on the female side. Yeah. So, I mean, what it is Russia is extremely good. I mean, they're right up there. If it's not the U.S. reigning number 1, it's going to be Russia. It's back and forth over the last several decades in wrestling. Mm-hmm. We've got Greco-Roman and we've got freestyle. So freestyle is the big one that everybody pays attention to. Really, is what Snyder and Helen are in. Just we weren't the best on that day, and a lot of it I gotta think that both Helen and Kyle especially. Wins the NCAA title, then goes and wins the Olympic gold, then comes back, loses during the season, but then wins another NCAA title and getting a lot of press, a lot of publicity. He's doing a lot of stuff on social media. He's got repping products now and shoes and all over Instagram. So, it'd be hard-pressed not to find validity in the argument that, maybe the public spotlight and all of the media stuff, obligations, and the growing enterprise that is Kyle Snyder now, may have impacted his ability to focus and really,
Isn't it amazing how quickly it kind of switched away from who our hopes were in 2016, which was Jordan Burroughs, and how quickly it went to Kyle Snyder,
Yeah, and Jordan as well didn't win the gold, but he's had his run. I think he's on the end stages of his career, so still performed very admirably, but he definitely passed that torch on to Snyder, and I think Kyle will have another run with Tokyo if he doesn't get lured into, a good sized contract with the UFC or maybe even Bellator, because he's expressed interest in
that's what I'm
the
wondering.
MMA. So
Yeah,
there's more money there than training for another Olympic gold.
that's kind
Had
of
he
what I'm
won
getting
silver, maybe he's more dedicated to gold in Tokyo. But having already won the gold, he's checked that off his list.
So what say you about that, Dallas? If you are not paying attention to wrestling, you should be. And we have an expert that's in the room. I've already getting a nod of approval from the Jedi Master over there. He's learned a thing or two. But this is kind of where I was going to give a quick rapid fire, but it's since we're on collegiate style wrestling, let's just, for the casual viewer that's going to tune in today that may not really know, let's just see if you can give a quick, maybe encyclopedia reference to each of the ones that should be talked about. And anybody I leave out is fine with me. You can always add and others too. The first one I have to start with to get anybody started in a collegiate style wrestling knowledge base, I'm going to start with your opinions. And let's talk about Dan Gable.
Yes, Dan Gable. I mean, the epitome, the icon of folk style wrestling and American wrestling, really. I mean, undefeated high school, undefeated in college up until I think his final match of his senior year.
Yeah, so.
Like 144-1, something like that, and then Olympic gold. Coached then again for Iowa for 27 plus years, made Iowa the dominant program in wrestling, the pinnacle of collegiate wrestling, championship after championship. He is, you think of American freestyle wrestling, there's a lot of great wrestlers, but Dan Gable is probably the one that anybody outside of the States would know.
Would sincerely hope so on that one.
Yeah.
The second one I want to add to that kind of might interest you. Let's talk about Cael Sanderson.
Cael Sanderson, yes, phenomenal. Again, another incredible American wrestler. Went undefeated, I believe, through all 4 years of college. 4 national titles. Again, he's probably one of the 4 on the Mount Rushmore of American wrestling. Went to the Olympics, actually lost twice, I believe, to UFC middleweight Yoel Romero.
I believe that's right, yes.
But yeah, undefeated in college, just phenomenal collegiate wrestler at Iowa State.
Yeah, which I've always believed that Yoel Romero kind of got his push because of that accolade of being able to overcome Cael Sanderson, which gave him a nice bit of ability to walk onto that stage and go from there. And we could get into Yoel if you want to in a minute, but you've kind of covered Jordan Burroughs and Kyle Snyder right there. I mean, if you want to go into detail about those, but there's another Kyle that I'm really itching to talk about who's still looking pretty good these days, Mr. Kyle Dake.
Yeah, Kyle Dake had outstanding collegiate career. Just won, I believe, won a gold again here this year in the World Championships. Right. Another of the newest generation, maybe the current torch holder for American wrestling. 4 national titles, World Championship medal. Does both folk style and obviously collegiately, and then freestyle on the world stage. But he's fantastic. He's one of very few wrestlers in U.S. history to win 4 national titles and a world championship.
See, I didn't even know that one, man. You're smartening me up a little bit on Kyle Dake's career. I love it. Before we get into one, I have to talk about a tragedy, but this was mentioned on You're Welcome with Chael Sonnen. He was talking about how we believe that one of them has finally found his weight class, and he said it was David Taylor. Would you agree with that one, that he's found his spot?
Yeah, I think so. I think he found the weight that most suits him. I mean, for wrestlers, it's always tough because they people that are naturally larger want to cut as much as possible for the weigh-in, so that they, by the time they refuel and they rehydrate their strength, because they want that strength advantage over a naturally smaller guy. But they're never going to get back to full strength by weigh-in. So that's always the fine line, the battle with wrestlers is which weight class. Do they go to their natural weight class where they're not cutting and they're just walking around healthy, or where they cut and try and gain that size and strength advantage? But yeah, I definitely think Taylor is at his more natural weight class now, and I think this may be his best fit and his best chance for a run on the international stage.
Nice. That's a nice layout about him for that. The reason why I said a tragedy is because I'm not sure what age you were at, or if you were following on the news, and how you feel about its adaptation into the recent movie that was done for cinema. Here's my question about how familiar are you with Foxcatcher and the David Schultz tragedy?
Yeah, pretty familiar. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that was a very interesting story with DuPont and
Yeah.
at a time back then, which I still don't think there's a whole lot of funding, but at a time where something like folk style wrestling international, there was no money for anybody.
Right.
I mean, if you wanted to train, if you wanted to pursue Olympic gold medals in the international stage, you literally were on welfare, like a Conor McGregor was over,
Yeah.
the claims in Ireland. So there was no money, period. And DuPont was, a scrawny, more sickly child, didn't have the athletic ability, and was just fascinated with wrestling and the macho side of it and that kind of thing, and started that Foxcatcher school in Pennsylvania to try and give a place for Olympic hopefuls to train and live, and paid them a stipend, and and then got weirdly obsessed with them, and Dave Schultz, who became very close with them, him and Mark, the brothers, and
Right.
For whatever reason was I don't think DuPont was ever quite right in the head from a weird upbringing, and being the child of a family of heiress and billionaires and that kind of
Right.
thing, and not getting the attention, and just went off the deep end and ended up shooting and killing Mark Schultz. So very very tragic ending to what was seemingly a pretty cool story about somebody
Right.
putting
Well,
up money.
If I remember correctly, it was Dave Schultz that was shot, and then Mark went on and did a run in the UFC, like for a short
Yes.
period of time. When it was
which is rarely ever talked about.
Right.
Nobody, and that wasn't brought up in the movie Foxcatcher with Steve Carell. They didn't really cover that whatsoever.
Yeah, they did a little snapshot of it at the very end,
Yeah.
and then just ended it there. It's like, what kind of a cliffhanger is this, especially for anybody who has a wrestling background? But there's a documentary about Foxcatcher that seems to be a little bit more in depth. And if we've lost Kevin, then we can go and get him back on in a second. Okay, never mind. That was a glitch on our part. Apologize to the blockhead. But I was just watching that, and I'm going, okay, we've got Mark's side of it. Mark writes the book about his incidents, and I have that on my bookshelf. And yeah, there's so much that's in his story that we should follow, but there was definitely something severely wrong with John DuPont from that point on. And
just a weird obsession with those guys, and
I think the comment was made about wrestling being a, quote, low sport, and I wanted to just throw something at my TV. I said, are you kidding me? Do you realize how far back the history of this goes to ancient Greece amongst all that? But I was like, but I guess you whipping a horse and getting them to do training stunts and things like that is a little bit more of prestige. I digress. And so,
well, society, we've gotten to a place in America where if it's not a sport where A, the athletes can make big money, or B, networks, companies, sponsors, if anybody can't make big money off of it, it's a low sport.
Yeah,
we've got the Big Four and everything else.
Touche.
It's just a hobby, unfortunately.
Right. Unfortunately, that's there's a lot of truth behind that. See, that gives you this other side of the nickel. But you're kind of got something on the tip of your tongue that I'm waiting for. I don't know how much you're going to let it rip. I don't know if I'm going to change this to explicit content. But you have said for a short period of time that not long ago on your last episode that because of the fact that your co-host is taking on a big project and he has to exit for a while, that you want to take not only an approach for MMA and maybe to really promote the fighters, but you want to have a little more in-depth analysis about some things that are going on. And I'm wondering, is part of that because you put up maybe some political views, and instead of having honest disagreements, you have people that try to exile you or insult you, and you go, this is the problem that I'm trying to discuss? I'm going to let you rip on that one. Get it off your chest, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it brief, but yeah, we're definitely in an era where there's no, and we've talked about it before, there's no civil discourse when there's political dissension, when there's varying and differing opinions and views on what is happening, what has happened, why things are happening. There's no rational back and forth. It's one side states their point, one side states their point, and then it becomes insulting.
Right.
Nobody ever really wants to explore the truth, explore the reasoning why things are happening, and I've got my opinions on which side is worse. Clearly, I've got my opinions, but
yeah, sometimes we pick the lesser of two evils in some situations.
No one really on either side, to an extent, is willing to ever give up any ground to logic.
Right.
No one is ever willing to sit and listen to a logical, rational argument, listen to facts, listen to undeniable, verifiable statistics,
Sure.
and say, okay, maybe you're right. I may not like it, but you're right. That doesn't happen.
That's kind of what
There's never an acceptance of truth anywhere, and I think that's sad.
Yeah. There's a quick little reference I can give on what you're talking about, how things have changed. I don't know if you remember when the Watergate incident went down. We had a guy named Charles Colson who spent time in jail. But when he came back, not too long ago, he wrote a book called The Sky Is Not Falling. I think he wrote that in 2012. But he mentioned there was a time you can go to Washington, D.C., and I'll say it, Republicans and Democrats would get on the same elevator. They would go hang out in the same offices. They would maybe have coffee, smoke a couple of cigars. Even though they disagreed, at the end of the day, they can walk out and be civil people. And this is during the Watergate scandal that's going on. Now, you have exactly what you're talking about how nobody will decide to go, you know what, maybe you're right on this one. Maybe I should listen a little bit.
Yeah, and even if verbally, if they don't want conversation, if they don't want to have civil discourse, the fact that one side is openly and verbally not conducting, but encouraging people, their followers, to create physical havoc, to chase people out of public establishments, to harass them. I mean, politicians on television in front of millions of people are encouraging people on their side to harass and and cause whether verbal destruction, whatever you want to call it, people on the other side. Not just get out and vote, support our side, get the message out. They're telling them, yell at them, get in their face, chase them out of the restaurants, let them be known. That's sad.
Didn't that happen with Ted Cruz at a restaurant? Didn't that happen with Ted Cruz at a restaurant not long ago?
Multiple times.
My gosh.
The other, I'm blanking on it now, which I apologize. One of the senators who's got polio, he's not of swift feet. They're chasing him out of restaurants. They're attacking him on escalators in the airport, getting, within 6 inches of him, screaming at him.
Right.
As a citizen, if I ever saw that happening to anybody, any politician, whether I knew them or not,
sure,
I can honestly say wholeheartedly, I would step in the middle, and I would not let that occur because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you give a chance
to be sad and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, you have a chance to be a compromiser, break it a little bit, but if they continue, then you have this thing called pick a hand, 8192 on the other, and Brother Sin on the other. But anyway, I digress. But it almost sounds like that scene in Rocky V. You got to insult him, you got to dog him, because that's blood sells. That's what's happening. Yeah, the gospel, according to what you and I believe, we have our truths, we have our philosophies, we have our civic virtues, but the gospel, according to the New York Times, is more along the lines of go after them in the most despicable way. Go after a knee-jerk action.
And it's getting worse and worse because whether people like the president or not, whether they like his rhetoric, his mannerisms, the way he talks, they can no longer deny the economic progress, the progress in security, the progress, and they say, well, people on the international stage laugh at us, but they don't stand against us. Nope. They can say that the leaders of Germany or England, they laugh at Trump, but they're not crossing him.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie either.
Everything is falling in line. They're doing what he is stating needs done. Yeah. The NAFTAs, everything is getting – the things that he said were going to happen are happening. And they can no longer deny the progress we're making on an economic and a national front. So now they're resolved to play dirty. Their antics are now becoming far less civil because they can't rely on the facts anymore.
Which is
unfortunately. They can't say, well, look, the economy is tanking, unemployment is low, this and that. They can't say that because everything is on the up and up. So now they have to rely on the dirty means.
Yeah, and you and I are not going to try to go engage in that. It's like you got me, people screaming at the top of their lungs. You don't need another one. It's like, again, like I said, numbers don't lie. I'm sorry whether you like the president or not, but you can look at something that is proven called the gross domestic product. Just look at the numbers of the total goods and services in our nation, and I'm sorry, but facts are facts at this point. Now, again, am I telling you how to vote? No. I would always tell anybody that you have a civic duty to go vote, especially, and I can persuade you on what I see, and you can persuade very well on your side, but at the end of the day, you don't have to be asinine about it, and I said it too.
That's right.
So that kind of gives me a small opening here again. Again, I can't speak too much because Joel is not there with you, But you've been doing co-hosting on 8192 The Truth with him more often than not. But now that he's taken this project and you're going to start using more, you're going to kind of take the torch and be no longer the right-hand man, but be the front lead. Do you enjoy co-hosting more, or do you enjoy just riding solo?
I enjoy co-hosting when it's a when it's a equal conversation per se, and that's not an insult to Joel in any way. He's got a very large personality, and his presence carries, and it's enjoyable. Right. But I enjoy a good conversation where there is, a lot of back and forth, a point and counterpoint. So I do very much enjoy that. Mm-hmm. There is a lot of freedom in doing it on your own. It gives you the opportunity to, as you know, to make your point and get out everything that you want to say on a particular topic. But there's definitely more of a challenge in that, because you have to find more of a way to bring a listener in and make it more entertaining and make it more engaging, because there is no point and counterpoint. There's no two voices. You've got one voice throughout the entire show, so you've got to find a way to create mood, up and down, elevation. You don't have high
to
points, low points. You can't just be monotone, both in sound quality, but in topic.
Absolutely.
You need to create an experience, whether it's 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. You have to create an engaging experience that somebody's going to want to listen to for the whole thing, and that is a little more challenging as a solo. There's only so many Bill Burrs of the world and some of those guys that really have the personalities and the chops to get on and rant for an hour at a time by themselves a few times a week, every week, and make it extremely entertaining.
Right, which nowadays is what Chael's doing. Now Chael's rolling on his own flying solo sometimes. Yeah, so he can do both worlds very well. Yeah,
I mean, there's only so many people that are that brilliant in front of the microphone that they can just riff on a topic. And obviously Chael does a lot of good research on the things he talks about, and he makes it educational and entertaining. Everything he talks about. Yep. You learn something.
And too often, he said before, I will hand you the cliff notes, and if you follow this, eventually something is going to come true, which is why I've been looking for this medium right here to ask you. This is a nice little pivot into MMA, because not long ago, we talked about Kyle losing and things being good, but then I sent you a message to go, how do you feel about this? We have the first trade in the history of MMA, Ben Funky Askren from one championship for Demetrius Johnson in the UFC, and your words were, I hope you're okay with me saying this, they were unbelievable, but I didn't get a lot of elaboration on that. So here's a chance to say what you see with this first trade in the history of MMA.
Well, I mean, all the upside in this trade, if you want to call it, which is not a trade as we see it in any other major sports, but yeah, for lack of a better term, trade. I think all the upside is on the UFC end. I mean, Mighty Mouse, fantastic fighter, one of the greats, but they say, he's the top-selling flyweight, but that's, tallest midget in the room situation. It didn't do much for the UFC. So I think all the upside on this transaction is with the UFC, and it finally, it's going to spark some life into that division at 170. I really think this is the catalyst I think they will end up cutting the flyweight division, but it will be the catalyst for the UFC to add the 165-pound division, because now they've got a name and a face. And Ben Askren, he may not be Conor McGregor, he may not be John Jones as far as fame, but he's a great talker. He's a well-educated guy. He's a great public image, never had even a scratch of impropriety in his background. He's a solid individual, and he's a hell of a fighter. Yeah. So I think this is huge for the UFC. I don't think it's going to change anything on one championship fighting side. I don't think they're going to gain any more viewers stateside. If anything, maybe it leads to I really think it'll be one of those situations now where it's something that's going to be shown on Fight Pass with with Ryzen and Invicta. It's I think that's probably part of the deal. It's going to get them more exposure.
Right, it's a good start, to be able to have the fan base for Eddie Alvarez and for DJ to be able to go to ONE FC, which is beneficial on that end. To say we got two well-known names coming here. Yeah, but I liked your word there for catalyst. I really did. That's a well way to put it, and we have to kind of see how this rides out. But the reason I said all that and saved it for now was because your boy Chael was screaming at the top of his lungs about how Ben Askren is being held back by bureaucracy and red tape, and he would give anything to be there. And all these other ones have to do is raise their hand and say, "I'll do it."
Yes.
And that thus, after we hand over the cliff notes, it didn't. One thing leads to another, and we grease some palm, and we have this quote unquote trade.
Yeah, and this seemed to come out of nowhere, and it all seemed to go down. Who knows how long it was in the works, but yeah, we didn't hear anything from Dana. I mean, much smoother process than you would have thought, considering what we heard was the reason he wasn't in the UFC because of bad mouthing Dana and saying some things. But yeah, it's going to be good for the UFC because it's going to hopefully end that argument of the MMA purists, the diehards, the people that truly pay attention, especially those that are also devoted fans to wrestling. People that know how good Ben is. That argument with all the pop culture UFC fans who know nothing about real wrestling and don't know about Ben. The diehards think that he can come over here and just have a reign of terror over the UFC, and all these other people that watch a few clips and think and say, he's boring, he'd get slaughtered. Now it's going to end that argument. He's finally going to get over here, and the diehard fans are really going to see, is he really as good as we believe he is? Because we've seen him, on the Olympic stage for wrestling. We've seen him win 2 national titles and, just run roughshod over Bellator and 1 championship. Now that he's in the big leagues, is he what we've been telling people he is?
That's kind of what I'm getting at there. Again, it comes down to, in my mind, it's let's wait and see on this one because you have a lot of praise from his teammate Tyron Woodley, who continues to boost him in the public eye. But then you have somebody like Michael Bisping, who goes back and just says, this is a sad day for the flyweight divisions. You're going to have every perspective here. Again, it's going to have to be wait and see, and just for his case. Now, I've been hinting at this for a minute, and I know that you've done it on your show, but for my small fan base that have been loyal to me since the beginning, you took a trip to New York and you watched a heartbreaker not long ago. So could you walk us through what you care to share about Fedor Emelianenko versus Chael Sonnen?
Yeah, I mean, the whole experience was fun. Wasn't the first Chael fight we've been to, but it's always an experience for me, being a huge Chael fan and now having become, I would call a friend. We had a good personal conversation, at weigh-ins. I got there to see that. We hugged, we chatted, we had some conversation. I talked with his coaches. And then, on a personal side, even after the fight, he just went through the loss. He'd gotten beaten in the cage. Come out.
It's all good. We got a dog in the studio too, and he just popped his head up like, "Who's?" He wants in on the podcast too. You can't blame him.
But yeah, I mean, everybody in the the building is still watching the ring and everything, or the cage, and Chael's walking out. And he stops mid-ramp immediately after losing a heartbreaking fight, and he reaches down, shakes my hand, and talks to me for a good 3-4 minutes right there on the ramp instead of walking to the back to kind of hide his face in shame. So that was really powerful to me. Everybody's looking at me like, whoa. So that was cool.
That's amazing,
for me, man, as a fan, to be somebody that he just spots me and stops and talks to me like a real friend.
Sure.
After the fight. But the whole experience, it was interesting for me because a lot of people who are fans now of mixed martial arts may not have been fans 10 years ago during the real prime of Fedor, especially because he was over there in Pride and then briefly in Strikeforce. So there's not a lot of connection with Fedor to the modern day MMA because, he was over there in Japan and, different generations per se. But to see him come over and to see the throngs in the stands, New York City's got a large Russian immigrant, population and ethnicity. So that's a natural spot for one of his fights to have a large contingent of Russians. But to see how they view him over here, talking to some of them, he's like a Michael Jordan over there to them. He is a huge public figure in Russia, even well past his prime. He's somebody that can't walk, much like they say Khabib is over there, which I don't know. But Fedor is one of those guys that couldn't walk around without getting mobbed. He's that kind of presence over there. And to see him over here and to see the amount of fans that, kind of worship him in that way and the energy, being in the U.S. Honestly, a majority of the arena was rooting for Fedor. Was very interesting for me, and to see, you know, just to see that there is a connection for something that a lot of MMA fans over here don't really have, because they can watch a few Fedor clips here and there on YouTube, but they've never really were able to experience his fights live during his prime.
Sure.
But just to see that contingent that did know about it and in the support, it was very interesting. It was a very interesting vibe, and like, he brought a lot of energy even past his prime at his age over here in America. He got a huge pop when he came out, and brought a lot of energy to the arena. It was very interesting.
Yeah, you can't underestimate the power of television, because Paramount has been bringing Bellator MMA, and we got to see Matt Mitrione and him have a double knockout, and Mitrione recover faster. But then you have not too long ago where he faces Frank Mir, a horse like him, and then you have him take on Chael. So there's, even though it breaks our hearts, it's just are we going to see Fedor take the heavyweight championship, or you think Bader's going to take it?
That's tough. I mean, Chael took a lot of really hard shots. I thought Chael had a great chance. I thought, he survived the big shots, and, he got on top. I thought he would make it to the first round, and after that he'd really have a shot to control, because being there in person, Fedor was gassed. He was throwing just a lot of big swinging bombs.
Bader's got some cardio on him, so it's like...
Yeah, Bader does. So Bader's a natural 205. He's got pretty decent cardio for a light heavy, and especially as a heavyweight. But, yeah, I think Bader can probably grind him out a little bit more. And, I don't know that Bader's necessarily a better wrestler than Chael. I don't think that's the case.
That. No.
But I think Bader's probably just in a little better position physically and age-wise. Yeah, I think Bader will. I think that, and it's good for Bellator if they get a champ. I think that would be interesting for them. So, yeah, I see him doing it. I don't see it as a knockout. Bader rarely has any of those quick fights. I've seen some of his most agonizing. His fight at Madison Square Garden when I was there with Phil Davis was a snooze fest. It was 15 minutes of just nothingness. But I think that will benefit him in this situation. I think he'll be able to get on top of Fedor and just kind of wear on him.
But, of course, the last time you were at Madison Square Garden, even though Phil Davis and Bader were a snoozer, we get to the main card and we have something that I've been ticked about since day one, and finally in December things are going to be made right. Your opinions on Brent Primus versus Michael Chandler Part 2?
I think Chandler just mops the floor with him this time around. He didn't lose the first time. He had that freak ankle thing where it was a dead nerve or something. It wasn't even a break. It was something very odd.
Miss Blockhead was almost in tears for him. She was like, the poor thing. She went into mother mode.
And then to have him take so long off Primus and not defend the belt, not do anything,
Seriously.
And then talking to some of the guys on Oregon who said he's walking around like 220 pounds. I think it's going to be ugly. I think Chandler's a man on a mission. Chandler is, I watch his Instagram videos and stuff like that. That dude trains like an insane animal. I think he's going to steamroll Primus this time around. Which is no easy task, because Primus is tough. Don't take anything away from him. He's a stud, but I just think Chandler's got that look in his eye this time.
It's just something about the hunger that's there versus Primus, at this time with the situation, being a paperweight, putting on an extra keg, and that's going to be taking some time for him. I don't know. There's something happens to guys sometimes when they have the belt. And I wonder if that's the case with him. But since we're on the Madison Square Garden topic, that I have been complaining and belly aching about for a while. What is your opinion on UFC 230 with Daniel Cormier, Derek Lewis, now the co-main event being Jacare and Chris Weidman? So what do you see coming out of those? What do you want to talk about, the co-main event or the main event, or just what you've seen with the switching back and forth? What do you think's going on with Madison Square Garden? Is it even worth tuning into at this point? Or do you think that will it even hold a candle to 299 with the incident with Khabib and Conor? Or what do you think is going to go with 230 at this point?
I'm more disappointed that Rockhold fell out. I was really looking forward to that fight. I thought that was going to be, a special fight.
Indeed.
Rockhold is he's just a specimen. I mean, his size, his striking ability, his top game. He's just an absolute specimen. And you know, Weidman took that tough loss and had another and was on a little losing streak. But I think he's a phenomenal fighter as well. So I was really looking forward to that rematch, and it was sad that it took that long to get that back on the cards. But you know, that just it goes back to the whole thing that's been talked about many times with AKA out there. Those guys just train, which I don't even know if Rockhold's with AKA any longer, but their training is just something to a level where those guys are getting hurt all the time. I mean, Cormier, Khabib getting hurt, and
I'm kind of with you on that one. It's just one of those, hey, Derek Lewis is a fun guy to watch. I'm sorry. It's just, is he a person that can bring eyes on the product? Yes, he can. And it was needed for a co-main event because we talked about that for so long, is that the co-main event was undetermined, TBA, for so long.
Yeah, that whole card has been a mess. I mean, nobody would have watched
Valentina Shevchenko
and the other girl.
Right.
Nobody knows her name.
Cesaro
Nobody would have
Eubanks.
watched it.
Yeah.
That would have done nothing for what for the bill that they have to pay to hold an event at Madison Square Gardens and everything else with the New York unions. And,
sure.
I mean, there's so much money involved behind the scenes because of it being in New York City.
Right.
It would have been a losing venture.
Right. Do both of them deserve to be on the card? Yeah, but that doesn't mean you have the validity to be on the main event. Yeah.
Yeah, and Derek being, you know, with his last fight, the post-fight speech and stuff, he's hot. So
he's hot.
Was a good move.
He don't keep his pants on very well.
And good for him. I mean, he's got an incredible story, and you hear about his past and what he's gone through and doing time in prison and stuff like that.
Right. He's finally going to get
even.
It'll be
a nice payday for him. And,
yeah.
You know, he's got that power.
He does.
There is a chance he could catch DC. He's got that puncher's chance.
Yeah, and makes
it fun.
Finally going to get his revenge, like you said, for how much Dan Cormier has disrespected Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Popeye's chicken.
Oh, sorry, Popeyes.
The hell with Kentucky Fried Chicken. It's Popeyes.
Touche. I'll give you it. It is true, but it's like, yeah, it's still hilarious.
But that was one of the more funny moments in the UFC press conference. Yeah, when DC came out and said Derek said he was going to kick his ass, and they asked him why. He said because he disrespected Popeye's chicken. So he's a funny guy.
He really is. And you know what? That's another thing. I shouldn't get upset about it. I'm not going to. But then he mentions about Trump calling. Look, I don't really believe Trump called Derek Lewis. Now, granted, Roosevelt did call Joe Louis in the middle of the Max Schmeling fight. Now, that one is true. But however, when it comes to Derek Lewis, I'm like, that was an old adage to the famous fight between Germany and the United States. Now, that was clever on his point to talk about how Trump gave him a call and said, yeah, knock him out. But let's not kid ourselves. I'm like, you're taking something you found off probably Wikipedia and turned it in and intertwined it.
I was impressed he was that witty after taking 3 rounds of getting smacked around, because he really...
Seriously.
He would have easily won a unanimous or lost a unanimous decision had he not had that knockout. He got smacked around pretty good.
He was
still able to be pretty witty there at the end. So I was impressed with that.
Again, a little another number out of Chael's book, but it's like one of those, you think there's more than one out there that can do what he does, and I'm thankful for him. So I'll give him for what he's worth. I was just hoping the girls would eventually get back onto the card. I have a breaking thing here. Of course, this is ESPN on my phone, but I literally have the update. It says that, according to ESPN, that UFC and One Championship have agreed to the Demetrius Johnson-Ben Askren deal, but we don't have a debut that's on point. So they're just saying that they have officially agreed to release former flyweight champion Demetrius Johnson, and One has agreed to release Ben Askren. So you had that in real time on this show. Hi, Gabby. I can't believe you're interested in this topic. But, in the meantime, man, I think we've really covered every topic that we really want to discuss.
So let me ask you, who do you think is fight number 1 for Ben?
I
love if you've been paying attention. He's just been going after the entire 170-pound.
This seems to me like if I'm going to pick one that seems the most into, and I mean they're going to have a Twitter battle between everybody there. But honestly, when I look at the weight classes and who I think it probably should be, where there can be the most bad blood, I'm leaning towards Darren Till. And that's not my number one. That's my number one choice for now. But you know how quickly our sport will change.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at Darren Till's response and going, this is a better build-up versus all the other ones. I'm like, okay, do I really believe you're going to take Nick and Nate in the handicap, have Nick one round and Nate? Give me a big league break.
Yeah,
but it's fun to watch.
Either or Till or depending on the Woodley fight, Till or Colby Covington.
True.
I mean, obviously, the fight everybody wants to see is one of two.
Right.
Either Ben and Khabib at like a 65 or Ben and GSP. That's the fight that people want to see.
I keep wanting to say make fighting great again, Colby, but I'm still waiting for them to put pen to paper for the match he's been talked about going into. So as much as I want to say Colby, I'm leaning at the moment towards Darren Till, but those are the two I'm going in between at this point. Do we need to start wrapping you up, Brother Sin?
Pretty soon here.
That's okay. I mean, that really gives me. We've covered everything you want to, but however, I guess all I have to ask is I've always done something to the listeners, and I don't know if you have the same one you did when we first came on episode 41. If you don't know, ladies and gentlemen, if you go to iTunes, you're going to have Brother Sin come on several different takes. He's on episode 41, 44. He does a swap cast with me on 45. I called in on 81 and 92 several times try to do a Nicky Bone smack off. It didn't happen. But nonetheless, there's always a message. If nobody heard anything else from you today, what would it be? You had your physical condition talked about last time, but what's one thing, if they heard nothing else, you want the message from Brother Sin, Kevin Surnear, to be solid on point? I give that one to you. What would you give to the audience for your favorite blockhead?
That I'm worthy of a word greater than special. I'm beyond special.
Touche. You're definitely not a Waldo Faldo. You're definitely
Waldo or Raldo Faldo.
Yeah, P and the P stands for icon. Well, Kevin S and the S stands for supreme. Maybe we can roll with that. Touche on that one. But man, I thank you so much for having me on. And ladies and gentlemen, before I let you go, I want to mention one more thing to you. Jedi Master, if you would please, could you put on the screen our next affiliate I want to talk about, which is Century Martial Arts. 45 years and growing strong. Gain a competitive advantage and advance yourself as a martial artist by choosing the best training gear in MMA from Century Martial Arts. Whether you're a black belt instructor, you're a school owner, a new student, or just a fitness enthusiast that wants to get the most out of your training, take the time and look through Century Martial Arts. I personally recommend the Muay Thai pads. I recommend the gloves. I recommend the traditional Century Wave Master bag. They have one called the Torrent. You have the Bob XL that you've probably seen before. And nonetheless, guys, if you go to checkout, make sure you use the promo code SAVE10. You know your favorite blockhead loves to give you deals whenever we talk. So if you go to Century Martial Arts, you're supporting the show, you're supporting Century Martial Arts, but we're also giving you a win-win all the way around. Use the promo code SAVE10, capital S, capital A, capital V, capital E, 10. And that is my plug for Century Martial Arts. Brother Sin, thank you so much for coming on Dallas on Air today. And if you have anything else, sir, I bid you adieu.
Vote red.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Well, one last thing for the guys that are at the Notre Dame versus Navy game, I wish you safety and enjoy watching from beautiful Qualcomm Stadium. This is your favorite blockhead, and we'll see you the next time around.